On today's Jerusalem Dateline, prayers for modern Hanukkah miracle as Israel fights a war for survival. And over 100 families wait to receive their loved ones back from captivity. Plus, calls to revoke student visas for those endorsing foreign terrorist organizations. Christian Friends travel to Israel to support kibbutzim in need of workers and reconstruction. And IDF soldiers in Gaza get intel just in time to save their lives. All this and more coming up on today's Jerusalem Dateline. Hello and welcome to this edition of Jerusalem Dateline. I'm Chris Mitchell. Now in its third month, Paul Strand gives us a rating on the fighting in Gaza.
2 months after Hamas's October 7th massacre, the IDF continues to make progress in its mission to destroy the terror group. In a stunning reversal from the celebrations of Gazans that day, hundreds of suspected terrorists have been captured.
Fighters of the IDF and the Shin Bet arrested and interrogated hundreds suspected of involvement in terror activities. Over the past day, many also surrendered. The intelligence we are gathering during the interrogations serves us during the continuation of the fighting.
The intelligence gathered may well help the IDF know more about the 138 hostages still inside Gaza. The IDF also announced they killed 2 high-ranking Hamas intelligence terrorists. It also announced Hamas is reportedly firing rockets out of safe zones. The IDF also included Khan Yunis, the second largest city in Gaza, as part of its evacuation zones. Amid the intense fighting, U.S. President Joe Biden called Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and Jordan's King Abdullah to increase humanitarian assistance to the civilians in Gaza. He emphasized the critical need to protect civilians, provide corridors to safe zones, and separate them from Hamas. In talking to reporters after meeting with United Kingdom Foreign Secretary David Cameron, the U.S. Secretary of State gave his strongest public criticism yet of Israel's military operation in South Gaza. With Reuters reporting he said there was a gap between Israel's intention of protecting civilians and the number of casualties. But the Israeli Defense Forces report that Hamas is launching rockets from inside humanitarian zones that have been established to give civilians a safe refuge. And another challenge for Israel is that Hamas uses its own people as human shields. Israel says it's supplying aid and provided Gazans with maps to get away from the fighting. Still, Israel says it's working to increase the number of aid trucks going into Gaza. Beyond Gaza, more attacks. Early Friday morning, the U.S. Embassy in Baghdad was hit by a rocket attack, the first attack since the beginning of the Israel-Hamas war. There were no casualties. And Prime Minister Netanyahu warned Hezbollah that if it started an all-out war, Israel would turn Beirut and South Lebanon into Gaza, while encouraging Israeli forces.
We are determined to bring victory, and we will do it with your help.
But for now, the focus remains on Israel's assault on Hamas in Gaza, with international pressure growing for Israel to finish the job. Paul Strand, CBN News, Jerusalem.
December 7th marked the first night of Hanukkah. It's a celebration of how the Jewish people overcame a wicked ruler and experienced the miracle of light more than 2,000 years ago. And it's more meaningful than ever this year in Jerusalem. Take a look. Hanukkah, also known as the Festival of Lights, commemorates the rededication of the Second Temple in Jerusalem by Judah and the Maccabees.
We're standing opposite the Western Wall of the Temple Mount. This is where the Second Temple stood. And at that time period, the Jewish people were living here as a Jewish people with a Jewish temple, and the Greek Empire was taking over the whole entire world. And they decided to impose their Hellenistic views onto the residents of Israel, saying, you must live in this Hellenistic lifestyle.
The Greeks banned Jewish practices, and their ruler, Antiochus Epiphanes, desecrated the temple. The outnumbered Maccabees rebelled and defeated the rulers of the known world. The miracle of Hanukkah came when the Maccabees went to rededicate the temple. While only 1 day's consecrated oil remained, it miraculously lasted for 8.
It was a time of darkness. We were surrounded by much larger armies and enemies, but we stood up for what was right, for those values that this Temple Mount represents. And eventually, we won. And the story of our victory is the story that we're back here, that the story of the Jewish people is still going on.
Here at the Reston Wall is one of the major public lightings of the Hanukkah. Hanukkah is celebrated like it is every year in Jerusalem, but this year is different, with the memories of the horrors of October 7th and the anguish of the many hostages still remaining in captivity in the Gaza Strip. All 138 hostages still in Hamas's hands had a candle lit for them.
We feel, especially in America right now, very uncertain of our safety and our future. So it's obviously much more heartfelt than I think I've ever had in Hanukkah's my life.
This Hanukkah is more special because I feel like we're reliving what happened thousands of years ago with the anti-Semitism in the world, with what happened here in October, and I feel that this is something that has to unite the Jewish people.
The bottom line is that we say Al Hanisim on the miracles that we see then and we see now. These miracles will continue to happen because this is why. That's what Hanukkah is all about. Remember, Hanukkah comes at the time that's the darkest time of the year. So at the darkest time of the year, we bring light.
Here in Jerusalem's Old City, the Hanukkah are lit outside the building. Here you can see a Hanukkah for each family in this building. They're lit outside and meant to be lit outside for two reasons: to publicize the miracle and dispel the darkness. As Jews worldwide begin the Hanukkah holiday, a sign of international support, German Chancellor Olaf Scholz lit the first candle of a public menorah at the Brandenburg Gate, the first time a German leader has taken part in the ceremony.
I wish that the candle of Hanukkah will shine far beyond this square and much longer than just for the 8 days of Hanukkah. Hanukkah stands for hope and confidence. Both are especially needed these days.
This year's Hanukkah is obviously extra special because we find ourselves in a time period here in Israel, but really all across the world, where people are fighting the Jewish light. They're hating Jews without even knowing the facts. They're hating Jews because they're Jews. And that's what we're standing up to fight against.
This year, many Jews light the candles for the ones they call the modern-day Maccabees on the front lines in Gaza, and for those in darkness who can't light their own. Up next, lessons from Hanukkah resonate from 2,200 years ago, more relevant than ever during this time of war. There's something timeless about celebrating an ancient holiday like Hanukkah, especially during a time of war. Jonathan Feldstein from the Genesis 123 Foundation stopped by the other day to give us his perspective. Jonathan Feldstein, founder and president of Genesis 123. Here we are celebrating the Feast of Hanukkah. What is Hanukkah?
So first of all, Chris, you know this. Anyone who reads John 10 knows that Jesus, not very far from here, celebrated Hanukkah, known in Scripture there as the Feast of the Dedication. So we're celebrating two incredible miracles. One is the rededication of the temple after its destruction 2,200 years ago, and the miracle of one vial of oil that was pure for the temple, that was meant for one day, that supernaturally was able to be used for the full 8 days that it took to refine the new oil and continue the temple service. And that's one. But the other one, which is so relevant to, unfortunately, our days today, is a military victory. Military victory over Assyrian Greeks who wanted to kill us spiritually, if not physically. And the Maccabees were the heroes of that story in the book of Maccabees, battles that took place here in my neighborhood south of here in Gush Etzion, and we're thanking God for all of the miracles that He's still doing for us today.
What are the lessons we can learn today?
Well, never to forget that God has our back, and that He's always going to take care of us. But I think our responsibility is, I think I used this phrase with you before, is to flood His inbox with prayer, because He wants to know that we care. He wants to have our active participation. And we always celebrate those miracles, especially at this season, by lighting the Hanukkah menorah and putting it in public places. You know this, walking around Jerusalem, beginning for the full 8 days of the festival, people light their candles outside and Jerusalem becomes a mini pyromaniac's delight. So we want to remember and always thank God, and we always have to be grateful for the miracles that He's done for us in the past, and remember that especially today, while we're at war, we are going to still rely on God doing miracles for us.
Yeah. And you're doing something special this Hanukkah with Christians.
Yeah, well, everything I do is special with Christians. We issued a prayer call for Christians all around the world, first of all, to light candles, to bring light to the world and put those candles in a public place, outdoors or in a window, so we're proactively doing something that's visible to the public, as we do here in Jerusalem and Israel and around the world, as it's longstanding Jewish tradition. But it's an 8-day holiday, so we put together 8 prayer points just to give people an extra opportunity to connect with that recognition that God is sovereign, will do what he needs to do, can do what he needs to do, and we just want to give him that encouragement. So every single day there can be just a different prayer encouraging people to get in the moment of what we're working on, what we're dealing with here personally, and pray for us and for Israel.
What are some of those prayer points?
Oh, goodness. So I have them, I have them printed. First of all, wow, the hostages. Just handed you one of the bracelets that we have that say bring them all home. We need to bring them all home. It's unspeakable what we know, what they've gone through, and that there's still about 140 hostages, and we don't know if they're dead or alive. And we need to pray for them, and we need to pray for their families, and we need to pray for everyone who was injured, still injured from 2 months ago this week. We need to pray for their families, because the trauma that's inflicted, not just on the people who've actually physically been suffering or traumatized, but the families, is so important. We were speaking about this now just before going on camera. We need to pray for the soldiers. My son is a soldier. He went into Gaza this week. Today's his birthday. Whoever would have imagined in my life I'd be standing on my son's 25th birthday and he'd be in Gaza. Marking that day in combat is surreal. I think we're in a unique historic period where Christian support for Israel and the Jewish people is at an all-time high. I think that we've never seen this, and I don't mean in the history of the state of Israel, 75 years, I mean in the history since the first century. There's a deep connection. There's a deep connection because the evil that is our shared enemy is so in our face. The love, which is the converse of the evil, is so necessary that we're experiencing such incredible solidarity here in Israel, and I'm overwhelmed by how much support and connection Christians want to have with us. And it's not new. It shouldn't surprise you. It doesn't surprise me, but it is surprising and it is overwhelming. And I do believe, not rhetorically, I do believe that literally we're in a historic time, and I just pray that that will always continue.
Yeah. Well, thanks for all you do, Jonathan.
Thank you, Chris.
Jews and Christians, and especially during this Hanukkah.
Thank you. God bless you.
Coming up, abandoned by the left. Why many American Jews feel betrayed by their political partners. The vast majority of Jews in America are considered politically liberal. Since the October attack against Israel, however, many liberal Jews feel betrayed by those they considered ideological friends. CBN's chief political analyst David Brody has the story.
One major result of the Hamas attack and subsequent war in Gaza has been an alarming rise in anti-Semitism, notably from the left in America.
Palestine will never die!
From student groups on college campuses
Go back to Poland! Go back to Germany!
To Jews attacked at rallies. With groups like Democratic Socialists of America promoting pro-Hamas rallies, it's left progressive Jews wondering what's going on in their world.
To be clear, you are not a feminist if you can't feel for the Israeli civilian women, children, and babies who were murdered. And so I'm very angry about what I'm hearing.
This week, we entered the upside-down world when a retrograde, regressive, totalitarian, misogynistic, messianic terrorist regime became, for the time being, the hero of the left. How could it be?
It shouldn't come as a complete surprise. A Harvard-Harris poll shows 36% of liberals see the Hamas attack on Israeli civilians as justified. Among 18 to 24-year-olds, a majority, 51%, say the killings could be justified. Overall, Gallup shows Democrats are more sympathetic to the Palestinians than the Israelis, 49% versus 38%. Democrat strategists like Joel Rubin believe if the left abandons progressive Jews who love Israel, there will be a political price.
If you kick out the Jews from the Jews who care about Israel from progressive coalitions, these progressive coalitions will have no political power, and they will go down the rabbit hole of looking like anti-Semites. One should be able to support Israel and being Jewish and still be progressive. But that is now becoming a litmus test in progressive coalitions.
Historically, anti-Semitism has existed worldwide in these circles.
The National Socialist Nazi Party, they were left of center. You know, the textbook definition of socialism is the state controls the means of production and distribution. And that is what Hitler advocated.
Today, liberal Jews break bread with the left on issues of abortion, gay and transgender rights, as well as overall social justice. A split grows, however, between the left and Israeli-supporting Jews when it comes to defending Palestinians and terrorists.
I am somewhat shocked that people would embrace Hamas, because there's nothing progressive about Hamas, right? This idea you have queers for Hamas or feminists for Hamas when they would kill these people or, force them not to drive or not to work if they're women is just bizarre.
Caroline Glick, contributing editor for the Jewish News Syndicate, sees that leading liberal Jews to fight back.
You're seeing a lot of Jews who major donors to universities, pulling their donations, quitting boards and other major institutions because they're suddenly realizing that they've been giving many millions of dollars to institutions that have become institutionally anti-Semitic.
It's a growing dynamic that progressive Jews may find they have to push through the pain in order to confront. David Brody, CBN News, Washington.
Since the Hamas attacks on October 7th, anti-Semitism has been on the rise in the U.S., especially on college campuses. Now, as CBN's Brody Carter reports, a coalition of 20 attorneys general is calling on the federal government to revoke student visas for those who endorse Hamas or other terror groups.
These are people that are here because we allow them to be here. And if they're going to engage in this sort of support of terrorists, we need to get them out of here.
The letter, written by Arkansas Attorney General Tim Griffin, calls on the State Department and Homeland Security to, quote, vigorously renew vetting of foreign student visa holders and promptly remove anyone who has endorsed or espoused terrorist activity or provided material support to foreign terrorist organizations.
I would say most of them also don't support terrorism. Most people who are here on a student visa are here to study and to learn about American culture. But those that are supporting terrorism shouldn't be in our country.
Iowa's AG Brenna Bird also signed the letter.
It's even more concerning when I hear students on campus say that they're scared, they don't feel safe because of what is going on there.
In 2022, the federal government issued more than 400,000 student visas, an increase of 53,000 over the year prior. One reason could be the money generated by the student visa program. It pumps about $38 billion each year into the U.S. economy via tuition, living expenses, and other spending. Almost 3/4 of these F1 student visa holders find jobs in the important fields of science, technology, engineering, and math within 3 years of graduating. Some call that a huge return of investment as top international talent stays here. These are the universities with the highest number of student visa holders and the dollars they bring with them. USC and NYU lead the way.
It often starts on the left and the right coast, and it ends up everywhere.
And the last thing we want is for Hamas and Hamas sympathizers to be using the United States in order to plan future attacks.
While free speech applies to all students in the U.S., including foreign visa holders, supporting terrorism does not. That's why the coalition is calling on the federal government to act. Brody Carter, CBN News.
Still ahead, helping hands and open hearts, standing with Israelis to keep kibbutzim going. Since the bloodiest attack on Israel in modern history on October 7th, Christians have donated to an emergency crisis war response fund established by FIRM, the Fellowship of Israel-Related Ministries, and some are coming to help from all over the world.
One major reason led 75 Christians from 10 different nations to visit Israel in the middle of a war, risking danger and paying high travel costs. They say it's to be the hands, feet, and hearts of FIRM's relief projects, which include cleaning up evacuated homes along the Gaza border and helping farmers in the field.
We have about 300 people serving in 5 different sites, helping to harvest vegetables, working in the agricultural space, and we're helping to repair and rebuild some bomb shelters, paint and clean to help these people that are about to return home.
Imagine taking all your vacation time and your vacation money and coming to a land at war just to help the people who live there.
This is a great time to come and show our love in practical ways and let them know that they are not alone. We Christians in other parts of the world are praying, and we feel so sorry. We feel their sadness.
It's a responsibility that you should take. We do need to take action. You can't just say, I'm standing with Israel and do nothing.
As the international volunteers are meeting Israelis, they're being asked, why have they come during a war?
And a lot of them are surprised that we would come now. And I think that's saying something, that we're not just coming to tour, but we're coming because we love you.
We're maybe 2 kilometers from the border, if that. And so people are here and we're picking oranges and lemons and pomelos. Trees are overflowing. There's fruit falling on the ground. And so I would say the work is imperative. Produce in this area makes up 60 to 70% of our nation's produce.
I am 15 years old, and when I heard that I could actually come here and help with people who were affected by the war, I jumped at the chance.
The members of the community where the volunteers are working fled from the Hamas terrorists after October 7th.
I'm from Yavne, Israel, and I just finished my serving in the army. I think that the people of the road were really appreciated, that a Christian group of people from all over the world come here and just help them. I think it will maybe open their hearts too.
To see that non-Jews from countries they've never even heard of before are coming to serve and support during this time, it changes everything for them.
By the end of the day, homes are freshly painted, bomb shelters have makeovers, kitchens are spotless, and yards ready for the evacuees to come home. Paul Strand, CBN News, reporting from Dorot, near the Gaza border.
The Bible is full of examples of miraculous protection given by God to those who call out to Him. Throughout the ages, people have wondered, can such a thing be true? Well, just ask the soldier in our next story.
Just wanted to share with you a little miracle that happened to my unit last Motzei Shabbos. One of the areas where we were stationed, we were staying in an encampment that's protected from all sides with mounds of dirt protecting us from missile fire from the sides. And everybody was feeling great and comfortable for the past month. We got a report from intelligence that there are some Hamas terrorists reporting, listening to them. However, they found out that they're digging tunnels, and they're reporting that these tunnels they found are right under an IDF encampment, and they can see tents and they can see tanks. After being given this report, we were given the instructions to move out of this encampment secretly and cover from the outside, Hamas not knowing that we had left, but we would be waiting for them to come. A day went by, nothing happened, and then all of a sudden another report came from the intelligence that they hear that these Hamas soldiers, terrorists, are 20 centimeters from coming out of these tunnels. And in the middle of the night, the guys noticed a figure coming out inside one of the tents where we were staying 2 days earlier. They opened fire, and as the gunfire hit him, there was an explosion, and he disappeared. And then a few seconds later, there was a massive explosion from under the ground, completely engulfing the tent and all the belongings in flames, as well as causing other openings within the encampment to cave in, revealing that there was a whole network of tunnels under the same spot that a few days earlier guys were sitting and off-duty and relaxed. Now, why is this specifically significant that it's happening now? Because now it's the month of Kislev. And Kislev is the month where miracles happened thousands of years ago. But as our sages teach us, that it's a time of miracles even today. And it's a time when we have to thank Hashem for these miracles. These Yimei HaOdah. It's not a personal miracle for just the soldiers that were saved, but this is a miracle for all the Jewish people. And we should all be zoche to see these miracles and to be thankful for them, and to believe that we don't have to be some soldier on the front lines to see a miracle. We don't have to be some hero, but every one of us, by thanking Hashem, we can see these miracles ourselves. Wishing everyone a happy Hanukkah and Am Yisrael Chag.
Well, that's all for this edition of Jerusalem Dateline. Thanks for joining us. Remember, you can follow us on social media and access CBN content through our CBN News and other CBN apps. And don't forget to pray for the peace of Jerusalem, the safety of IDF soldiers, and all those caught in harm's way, and that the hostages in Gaza would be returned to their families. I'm Chris Mitchell. Happy Hanukkah, and we'll see you next time on Jerusalem Dateline.